Pain heals. Chicks dig scars. Glory lasts forever.
Stephanie White is an absolute failure as a head coach, and it has nothing to do with all of the things that we normally talk about that we love to debate as fans: defensive systems, substitutions, calling timeouts, not calling timeouts, and all of those things. No, it's actually much more important than all that, and it's something that is just not discussed very often. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate all of your support. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Shout out, of course, to the 19. So let's dig into this. And I want to use a clip from Golden State Valkyries head coach, Coach Nat, talking about a player that she, I believe, pulled out of a game after a turnover, but then put them back in, and what that conversation was about. And then contrast that with how Stephanie White has approached similar situations and what that means in terms of coaching and getting the best out of your team and getting the best out of your players. So let's take a listen to this first.
But then you brought her back to make some big plays down the stretch. Did you prepare her in any way for the return?
Yeah, I told her I don't care if she turns the ball over. I said, I know she's not trying to turn the ball over. Like I said, sometimes she's just getting physically bumped. So if she gets physically bumped, like what's going to happen? She might lose the ball. I told her, I don't care. I said, I'm going to put you back in and you're going to kick some ass. And that's what she did. You know, I just kind of gave her a breather, like, because they were kind of being super physical. So I said, hey, I'm just going to give you a breather. You're going to go right back in. I trust her completely. I trust her with making the calls. She's brilliant down the stretch. She's very brilliant down the stretch. And no, she likes big plays. You know, she is not scared to do that step back three. She is not scared. And so you need players like that. You need players who can close. Yeah.
Last one.
Wow, where do I begin, folks? That is the speech that I wish was given to Caitlin Clark. If you remember, not all that long ago, I did a video about this, almost exactly about this, and it was completely different. Stephanie White pulled Caitlin Clark out of a game after a turnover on a pass, gave her a lecture, said just knock it off, none of this risky stuff. We all heard this. Caitlin said how later in the game, when she had a pass that she can make 99 times out of 100 that would have resulted in a bucket, she didn't make the pass and then was proud of herself for the decision making, or at least that's what she told us. I don't know. Caitlin Clark's pretty smart when it comes to basketball. Maybe that's just kind of what she felt like she had to say. This is, I'm going to draw on, and I don't mean to bore you and not like give you a resume, but I'm going to draw on my experience as a coach. Look, I played, coached, and officiated soccer and basketball. Not, don't get me wrong. I wasn't a pro, I wasn't anywhere near it, but I'm saying I do have that experience. And in fact, I think you learn a lot more about coaching when you've got to coach young players. I coached soccer for about 12 years, finished up not all that long ago, because while I coached multiple teams, I took one team from like U8 to U19, and then off to college they went. And I can tell you the most important thing from all successful coaches, it is not the X's and O's. It is not systems. It is not knowing when to call a timeout or how to draw up a play. All important things. I get it. But the most important thing is understanding that you are dealing with people and that your players are individuals and that you have to figure out the best way to approach them and to be able to get the best out of them. And I had players that I needed to light a fire under them because they were going to respond to that. It may not always be fun, but they're going to get that attitude. Yeah, I'm going to show coach. He thinks this. No, I'm going to prove him wrong. And you've got other players where you got to treat a little bit with kid gloves. You got to coax them a little bit. You have to frame everything in a positive way. What Coach Nat was doing right here, absolute perfection. Absolute perfection. What Stephanie White did, the complete opposite. She took a player like Caitlin Clark, who I think through high school, college, and her first year in the pros was at 8, 9. That's 9 years. She led the nation in assists in 8 of them. And the only one she didn't was her freshman year in college. And I think she was second in the nation. She was first in her conference. And you are going to get turnovers with the way Caitlin Clark plays. That doesn't mean there aren't ones you want to get rid of, but absolutely what you do not do with a player like Caitlin Clark is to try and rein her in, to have her commit a turnover and pull her out of a game and lecture her and tell her about how you don't want those plays made. That is absolutely absurd. Absolutely absurd. It should never happen. It is right there to me. That is why Stephanie White has to go. And that is nothing to do with all this other stuff. I'm sorry. If you're telling me Stephanie White should be coaching again, if you're giving me this nonsense about Stephanie White being a coach of the year candidate, you are an absolute fool, and I don't want to hear anything you have to say about anything. I'm looking at some of you in the sports media, just saying, because it is absurd, and you are not paying attention to what actually matters. The best coaches know what to do and what to say to their players to get the best out of them, to put them in positions to be successful. And you do not put Caitlin Clark in a position to be successful by telling her to not take risks, by telling her to not throw passes that she has been throwing her entire life. You do not tell a Brett Favre or a John Elway, don't throw those passes because they're risky, because those guys throw interceptions. Because you're going to eliminate everything that's good about their game as well. This right here to me is so much bigger than, oh, well, Stephanie White didn't call a timeout when the other team was on a 10-0 run. Yeah, that's important. But this is sort of the very foundation of what you need to do to be successful as a coach. And so if you take coaches, say you have a great soccer coach, football coach, you switch them to a sport they don't know, right? You switch them to a sport like basketball. Yeah, no, they're not going to know how to play defensively. They're not going to know what to do defensively on a pick and roll or how to draw up a great play to get their best shooter open at the end of a game. What they are going to know how to handle their team and how to handle their players and what to say to them and how to say it as well. That is just as important. I can tell you that 100% because I've experienced it. And it is far more important in how you handle your players as people and how you handle them in the situations like Coach Nat is talking about in order to get the best out of them. Far more important. Now, that doesn't mean that someone who's great in that situation, if they have no clue how to do any of the other stuff, that doesn't mean they're going to be successful. But I will take that as a foundation and have a coach learning all these other things. And it's going to give us a much, much better chance of being successful than a coach that knows how to draw up a play at the end of the game but has no idea how to handle their players. You've probably heard players talk about in some way, in whatever sport, how that for a coach, they'll run through a brick wall for that coach. Well, we used to say that a lot with players before participation trophies, so maybe you don't hear it that much anymore, but you used to hear it a lot and that type of thing. They will do whatever it takes for their coach, and they want their coach to stay. And that is why, because I tell you what, if no one had ever heard these coaches before, so we take an athlete and we give them the Caitlin Clark story about what Stephanie White did with a player like Caitlin Clark, and we give Coach Nat here, we give him this clip. Which coach do you think they're going to raise their hand for and say, I want to play for that coach? And it doesn't mean that Coach Nat isn't giving standards. It doesn't mean that she doesn't hold her player to higher standards. It means that she understands what is important and she understands how to handle her player to get the most out of them. You need to have a short memory as an athlete. Okay? If you're Michael Jordan and you've missed your last 8 shots and it is the end of the game, you need to have the belief that you are taking the last shot and you're going to make it. And if you've got a coach who's already pulled you out 3 times and say, well, don't take that shot. It's too risky. We want to limit risk. Don't take that shot. You don't pull Allen Iverson out after a play that ends badly and says, I don't want you dribbling anymore. Allen Iverson don't dribble. Allen Iverson, don't go after defenders 1v1, okay? I want you to get rid of the ball. And by the way, make it a very simple pass because we don't want any risk. I know I limit a lot of things that I say on this channel for certain reasons, but Stephanie White's approach to Caitlin Clark is bullshit. Okay? It is awful. It is incompetent. It is terrible. It is ego driven, and it has no business being part of the Indiana Fever. I'm going to leave it there. I think that's all I got for you. But hey, if you've been enjoying the content, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel. Really do appreciate it. Go have the day you deserve. I'll talk to you later.